Hi, good day. How are you? I'm Mr. Roberts from the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy, and welcome again to another e-learning program. I am Mr. Tomley Roberts, and today we will be looking at elements of design. Now, last time we looked at artistic techniques, and today we will be covering the elements of design, just a few of them. All right? Now, today's objective. At the end of this lesson, students will be able to effectively identify and utilize the elements of design to enhance their pieces. So, we'll be using the elements of design to add to the artistic technique which you already know to enhance your designs. All right, now the elements of design that we're going to look at today are color, texture, line, and value. That's color, texture, line, and value. And for those of you who've never heard of this before, just as a rhythm to remember this, color, texture, line, value. Color, texture, line, value. All right? So that's just for you to remember that. All right, let's look at color first. Now, color can be broken down into two basic main areas, right? And those two main areas are warm colors and cool colors. Now, this is a spectrum here that shows color. And this side, let's put a little arrow, would be considered as cool colors. All right? These colors here would be considered as cool colors. And this side, these colors on this side, yellow right down to this violet magenta color here, these would be considered as warm colors. Right? So cool colors, warm colors. Right? So I want you to keep this in mind when you're producing your painting. So if you're asked to produce a painting using only cool colors, these are the colors that you would use. If you're asked to produce a painting using only warm colors, these are the colors you would use. All right? So colors can be broken down into two main areas, cool and warm colors. Now, color is the property possessed by an object producing different sensations on the eye as a result of the way it reflects or emits light. Now, it sounds very sophisticated, but in a nutshell, color cannot exist without light. Imagine you're in a dark room. Would you see color? No, you wouldn't see color. However, when you put on the light, you would definitely see color. All right? So, color is the characteristic of visual perception described through color categories with names such as red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. These are the names that we are familiar with when it comes to color. And adding those to your work really makes it very interesting. Now, this chart in front of me that you're seeing right now describes what is called the color wheel. Now, the color wheel consists of all these colors here, but the first or the most important colors I would say in the color wheel are the primary colors, right? From the primary colors, you can get all additional colors. And let's identify your primary colors here. Your primary colors are red, yellow, blue. Red, yellow, blue. And your primary colors are used to get secondary colors. So let's do a little thing here. So red, yellow, blue, right? Let's create a little chart. Right, so these are your primary colors here. And you use your primary colors to get your secondary colors. Once you mix two primary colors, you automatically get a secondary color. So if you mix red and yellow, you will get orange. And orange now becomes a secondary color. So you mix red and yellow, you end up with orange. All right, so that's your orange there. If you mix yellow and blue, you end up with green. right? And if you mix red and blue, you end up with violet, right? And that is how you use primary colors to get secondary colors. Now, after you get your secondary colors, you would also need to create what is called your intermediate or tertiary colors. And to get your tertiary colors, you would need to mix a primary with a secondary to get the tertiary color. Right, so let's look at that. Example, we mix red and yellow to get orange. Orange is our secondary color. In order to get a tertiary color, you now mix the red with the orange and you would get another color between here. If you mix the yellow, you have yellow, and blue, you get green. To get an intermediate or tertiary color, you mix the green with the yellow and you get another color. So experimenting with this would cause you to get different colors, all right? And this is how you develop your color scheme by using the color wheel. So let's just run it again. Your primary colors, the basic 3 colors, red, yellow, blue, right? You mix your primary colors to get your secondary colors, right? Example, red and yellow would give you orange. Orange is your secondary color. And then to get a tertiary color, you mix the primary color, right, with the secondary color to get the tertiary color. So I'll repeat it one more time, right? So you have your primary colors, which are red, yellow, and blue, right? Those are your first colors. Now to get your secondary colors, or the second color, you mix the primary colors together. So let's say red and yellow, 2 primaries, you mix both of them, equal proportions, you will get orange. So orange is your secondary color. Now to get a tertiary color, you mix that orange with red and you get red-orange. And that is the process you follow to obtain tertiary colors. Now, something you must note, if you mix tertiary colors together, you will get something that is called mudding. So you would want to avoid that as much as possible. What happens when you mix all the tertiary colors, no matter what you do, they would come out as brown. All right, so you want to avoid that and mix the colors accordingly. All right, to effectively utilize color, one must understand color harmonies. Color harmony refers to the property that certain aesthetically pleasing color combinations possess. These combinations create pleasing contrasts and arrangement that are said to be harmonious. So color harmonies in a nutshell is basically about colors that match, right? Once you put these colors together, they will automatically match. Once you put these colors together, they will automatically match and create harmony. Now, what we are covering here today can be utilized by anyone, not just art students. If you are dressing, if you're going out, the same strategies that we're using here, you can do it for food decoration, house decoration, anything. The principle governs everything that we do in relation to color. All right, so we are going to look at complementary colors first. All right, now complementary colors simply mean colors that complement each other. Now, everything we are going to be doing here with the color wheel would illustrate colors that complement each other. Now, the color wheel, as we see it here, has several different colors. Remember, the primary, tertiary, etc. Now, complementary colors on the color wheel are colors that are opposite to each other. Let's look at this. So we have, let's say, red, and we have a green, right? These two colors are opposite to each other, right? And once these two colors are opposite to each other, they are complementary to each other. Any color that is opposite to each other on the color wheel will be complementary to each other. So if you add this color, you take this color, and you use this color, they will be complementary. So you have decided to do a painting, and the teacher would ask, okay, could you use complementary colors to produce this piece? Then if you do that, by selecting the colors that are opposite to each other, you will create a piece that is aesthetically pleasing, or what you want to call beautiful. All right, so remember the color harmonies, colors that are opposite to each other are complementary colors. Colors that are opposite to each other are complementary colors. All right? Now we have another one. Analogous color harmonies. Analogous color harmonies. Now, analogous may sound like a big word, but what it simply means is colors that are next to each other. So let's look at our chart here. Now, if you look carefully, these colors here are next to each other. And these colors here are also next to each other. So if you are doing a piece using analogous color harmonies or colors that are next to each other, then you would just simply select the colors that are next to each other. All right? And you can produce a piece by just using analogous color harmonies. All right? So this is just an example of how you use the color harmonies that specifically relate to analogous color harmonies. All right? So we're moving on nicely, and we are going to look also at what you call triad color harmonies. Now, when you hear the word triad, what comes to your mind? That's correct, triangle, right? When you think of a triangle, it has three sides, so triad means three. Now, follow me carefully. Let's cut this triangle out from here, all right? And let's stick a pin right here, okay? And we are going to move this triangle over to the color wheel, all right? Let's move the triangle over to the color wheel. And right. Now, if you take your finger and hit the triangle, wow, look at that, it's spinning. And now it's stopped. Now, if the triangle stops, wherever the 3 points of the triangle touches, or the areas that it points to, those 3 colors will always match. So if you remove the triangle from this point and you change the direction of the triangle, let's say from this point, this point, this point, no matter how you turn it, those 3 colors will always match. So if you want to do a painting and you're confused, you don't know exactly what colors to use, how am I going to do this painting for SBA? Get a triangle, cut out the triangle, make sure it's an equilateral triangle, all the sides are equal, equilateral triangle, all the sides are equal. You cut it out, you put a pin on it, and you stick it in the middle of your color wheel, and you click it so that it could spin, and wherever the points reach, then you can select your colors from there. So that's how we use the triad color harmony, and you need to remember that the triad color harmony means 3 or refers to 3 colors, right? It refers to 3 colors. 3 colors. Right? So the triad color harmony refers to 3 colors. Remember, try 1, 2, 3. So you are selecting 3 colors from on the color wheel, and you would use those colors throughout to produce your artistic piece. Right? And another color harmony strategy is the quadratic color harmony. Now, when you say quadratic, what do you think of? Have you heard that word before? Quadratic. Now, quadratic, that's correct, refers to 4 sides. So, if you have a shape like this, which refers to a square or a rectangle, you could cut it with your scissors, and you follow the same process as with the triangle. You put a little pin on it, and you put it in the middle of the color wheel. Let's use this as an example. Right. Right. So you put the pin there, and you spin that rectangle. Wherever these 4 points touch, then those 4 colors will always blend. No matter the direction. Once it turns and it stops on 4 colors, those 4 colors will always blend. Right? And your teachers would have indicated that you can use the colors, yes, and you can add black or white to intensify. Now remember, when you add black to the color, you are creating shades. When you add black to the color, you are creating shades. And when you add a white to the color, you are creating tints. All right, so even though you are using all these color harmonies, it's still important to use the black and white so you could create tints and shades. All right. Now, that was just a little capsule of the color harmonies. All right. So if you use those color harmonies along with the artistic technique, it would add some more dimension to your work. Now, another thing that we want to look at in terms of elements of design today is textures. Now, texture is another element of design, and texture is an element of design that defines the surface of shapes and forms. Now, texture that you feel with your finger, it's called tactile. While texture that the artist creates on a flat surface is called visual texture, so you could see it. Now, tactile texture is three-dimensional because it has height, width, and depth. Remember, in art, anything that is three-dimensional must contain these components here. All right? To determine if something is three-dimensional, once it has width, depth, height, width, depth, any order you want to put it in, then you know for sure it's three-dimensional. All right? So let's recap again. Texture is an element of design that defines the surfaces of shapes and forms. Texture that you feel with your fingers is called tactile texture, while texture that artists create on a flat surface is called visual texture. Tactile texture is three-dimensional because it has height, width, and depth. Right now, this here is an example of visual texture. The hatching technique was used to illustrate visual texture. All right, so this is the hatching technique, and it is used to create texture and also tonal values, lightness and darkness. If you look carefully, this area is very dark because they put the textures very closely together, and as you come this way, you realize it's becoming lighter. All right, so this is visual texture. Right? Now, this here is an example of tactile texture, and this is texture in our world, in our real life, right? These are stones, and you could actually use something like this in an artistic piece to illustrate whatever you're illustrating. So this is more of that type of tactile texture. All right, and we have another example here of texture being utilized in a painting. Now, at our last lesson, we looked at artistic technique of scumbling, where we use the dry brush and we quickly created some animated strokes across the painting. Now, this is an example of using that specific technique to increase the texture of your work, all right? So this is utilizing the artistic technique of scumbling to achieve texture. All right, so another element of design there, texture. All right, this is another example as well of both visual and tactile texture. We spoke about again in our previous lesson about the impasto technique. That's where you take up the paint as though you're adding peanut butter to bread and you apply it in thick chunks. Now, when you apply it, it creates that three-dimensional effect, and you can both see that it's three-dimensional and you can also feel that it's three-dimensional. All right, and another repetition here of the hatching, which creates a certain texture. If you look at it, it's almost resembles a piece of fabric, right? So it looks like it's a piece of fabric. So, and you could tell that the fabric is sort of rough by just looking at it, right? And that is the texture you could achieve by just manipulating lines. Now, this is a bit, right? This is another type of texture here, right? And this one was achieved by adding sand. Now, in terms of surface preparation, you can add sand, you could add paper, you could add stick, stone, twigs, anything to improve or enhance the texture of your work. So this specific example is utilizing sand with some glue to create an additional texture for your work. So once you combine those textures with the artistic techniques, then you would automatically produce aesthetically pleasing work that is very, very sophisticated. Right, so a line is considered to be a long, narrow mark or band, but there are many different types of lines. All right, so we're going to utilize a few lines, and I'm going to show you how you could use line as an element of design. So let's get started right away. Now, line is a very, very beautiful element of design. So let's explore the element of design line a bit further. So we have, let's say, zigzag lines. We have straight lines. We have broken lines. We have dotted lines. Let's look at another type of line. We have broad lines, and then you could have broad wavy lines. And you can even now take all of these lines and create something that is very unique. Let's start with the broad lines. So we have broad lines. So we have some broad lines. Let's use some thin wavy lines. So you're using some thin wavy lines. We just did a little illusion of a face there, and we are doing another one now, and we have some curly lines, more like doodling lines. Right, so this is just another example of how you can utilize line. You could go back again. You could then say, okay, I want to have some broader lines in this design. Let's work some broader lines here and to create that illusion of depth. Right, and this is just a simple way to show you how to manipulate lines. And if you wish to put some more lines to enhance your design, then you can do so. But this is just an example to show you how you can utilize the element of design that we call line to add sophistication to your work. Now, every single art piece usually starts with some type of line. So if you look at the example here, just repeated lines in two directions would create a lovely pattern. All right, that's one example. We have another example here as well. All right, using line by just starting at one simple shape in the middle, and then you go on and on and on and on, and you take it to another level. So line is very, very powerful. Once you combine at least two elements of design, then you're pretty safe. All right, and our final element for today is the element of value. As an element of art, value refers to the visible lightness or darkness of a color. Value is relevant to the lightness or darkness of any color, but it is important, but its importance is easiest to visualize in a work with no colors other than black and white and the grayscale. All right, so it is easiest to see value if it's black and white, but you must also utilize value in your painting even though you're using color. But we'll take a closer look at value so that you would have a greater understanding. Now this chart on the board, right, this chart is an example of what we call the value scale. This specific one is the grayscale, which shows a transition from darkness to light. Now, if you look at the form below, this is a drawing that was illustrated using artistic techniques such as stippling or hatching, and light is coming from the right side, right? If light is coming from the right, then your shadows will be casted on the left, right? So you have your shadows here, right? Now the light is hitting at the top right-hand corner, and as you look closer to the bottom of the ball, you would realize, or the sphere rather, you would realize that it's becoming darker. Now, if light is coming from the left, your shadows will be casted on the right. And what is happening here is that this entire thing is creating a transition from lightness to darkness. So it's very bright, and as it goes this way and the light disappears, it becomes darker. So in a sense, what you are exhibiting in your work is the value scale. So you use the value scale to create what you call tonal values, right? You use the value scale to create your tonal values in your work and to create that transition from darkness to light. So it's very easy to see it in black and white. Now, if you're using black paint, all you would need to do is add drops of white, drops of white, drops of white. Add more white to the black paint, or it would be easier if you have some white paint and you add various portions of black to change the color from white to different values of gray. And so you start with white, you add a little black, add a little black, add a little black, add a little black, and then you would create a value scale showing that transition from darkness to light. Right? Now, in terms of colors, the principle remains the same. If you look at this chart, this is the gray scale from darkness to light, and now we have some color charts on the other side. And these here are exhibits of the pure value scale using color. So let's say this is blue, and remember we spoke earlier about tints and shade. This is a perfect example to illustrate that when you add black to a color, you create shades, right? And when you add white to a color, you create tints, right? So looking at this, you would be able to see, let's start in the middle at this point. You add some black to the blue, it's dark blue. You keep adding white to it, keep adding white to it. As you come down this way, then it moves from darkness to light, and you would be able to see the different values of blue. All right, so this is an important strategy in painting. So you can actually produce a painting using one color, and this entire chart demonstrates what we call the monochromatic color harmonies. I will need to write that on the board somewhere here so that you can see that. The monochromatic color harmonies, right? And monochromatic color harmonies, all right? It means that you're using one color and you're adding black or white to create tints and shades. And once you have that, you can then produce a very, very interesting painting using the elements of design. You have the value, you have the texture, you have the color, you have the line, and you add that along with the artistic techniques that we covered previously, and you would be adding some real dynamics to your work. So based on what we've done here today and what we've done previously, you have enough information to really create an exciting artistic piece for CSEC. So this is your value scale and also your gray scale. So I want you to join us next time at the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy, where we can continue using other artistic fundamentals such as principles of design. And that will be the last area before we move on to another expressive form. So join us next time at the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy for our e-learning program.